All right, Christina, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, hello.
Hi, Jules. How are
Hello,
you?
Agent 128. How are you?
I'm good.
That's the
Agent,
way.
head agent of all of us.
What, you don't even know my number?
What's your number? I forgot. 666.
No. So many people want that number, though, and I sort of think it's quite weird. Um, it's funny. The numbers that get asked for the most are to do with sevens. So 007, 7, anything with sevens, double sevens. A lot of them are taken already, of course. But anyway, hi there, everyone. Welcome to our next Agents Live, Facebook Live with the Cosmic Intelligence Agency. I'm Julia, Agent 12, Agent 128, and this is Christina Cordill, all the way from Florida. Thanks for joining me, Christina.
Thanks so much for having me, Julia. I'm so excited to do this.
Yeah, I like to make sure that I get around to all the corners of the world, introducing the agents. This is a great platform to do that. Now, Christina, you're in Florida. And of course, I'm in Melbourne in the Cosmic Forest that I like to call it, the CIA's Cosmic Forest, where we will all meet one day. But what I'm saying is that what we're talking about is the final Jupiter and Uranus opposition that is happening at 27 degrees of, I was going to say of Uranus, of Aries and Libra. And it's been an ongoing, let's say, development since last December when they first met, when it was Uranus was retrograde as well and Jupiter was moving forward at about 20 degrees of Libra. Then they met again as an opposition in March, at the end of March 2017. And their final opposition now with Uranus retrograde and Jupiter moving on soon to Scorpio. So we're kind of summing up the story of Jupiter and Uranus today because it's a really interesting topic, isn't it? And it's actually going to be exact. Now, when we talked about exactness of planets that move quite slowly, although Jupiter moves quite fast once he gets going, it wasn't that long ago that he did start moving forward, or was it? Sorry, it probably was a few months ago. It's hard to keep up, but Uranus is moving very slowly. So this opposition is in and out of exactness throughout the whole year. And given what we've seen in the world, just before we start with the slides and everything, Christina, what, have you seen Jupiter and Uranus very much alive in this context over this year?
Oh, yeah, very much so. And, depending on what orbs we use, I mean, we love things to be exact and tight and everything. But if you look at all of late last year, 2016 through to now, there have been so many of these like watershed type moments, right? These breakthrough moments and some of them have felt very positive and some of them have felt very worrisome and, and not very positive, but they are definitely watershed moments. And so as we were creating the slides and everything, and I know you and I went back in time, which we'll talk about, to 2010 and 2011, and, looking at those years and seeing how that being sort of the new moon when those planets were conjunct. And now this is sort of the full moon, the full phase of the Uranus-Jupiter aspect, the opposition, so the ultimate like face to face, facing each other. And so seeing, and even just, I would say this week alone, right, seeing here in the United States, it's been a big week of people getting very excited about things, very, very fired up, everything from celebratory moments to things have to change in this environment type of moments, right? Yeah. But it's been big, if nothing else, Jupiter, we know, is about bigness because it expands things, and Jupiter expands whatever planet it aspects. So it'll expand the rebellion and the unexpectedness. It'll expand the unexpectedness and the rebellion of Uranus. And I
Yeah,
love what you
absolutely.
had recently on the page, on the CIA page. You said, if you were a sky god, what advice would you have? And everyone had some advice to give to us
Yeah, no,
little people.
it's a pretty good way of getting people engaged to to sort of say what they're thinking, and it does sort of sum up the times, like
Right.
what are we in here at the moment. And as Jupiter, well, they're both sky gods, so they're looking at everything from the top, from
Mhm.
above, in a sense. So we can also sort of see ourselves, let's rise above a little bit and have a look down at what's going on. As you said, there's the mix of, very anxious kind of moments mixed with celebratory moments, mixed with, the overwhelmingness of what we've just gone through as well, which is the incredible storms, the devastation. Again, these two are sky gods, and they're pretty big sky gods, and it's like, it's kind of like they're chucking lightning bolts. Both of them are associated with lightning as well, so therefore commanding the skies. Uranus, more from the ancient Greek myths of the original sky god that commanded all of the heavens, and then Jupiter in a more recent sort of context of the earth god that was the sky god that
Mm.
commanded over the earth. More like, what we'd say, many pictures of Jupiter look like the god, God. So
Yeah.
so it's the god of religion as well, in a sense, that
The
Jupiter looks
ultimate
like.
God. Yeah.
The ultimate god, yes. So it's like the two sky gods are warring, and it's like, here's a lightning bolt, and I'll up you a double lightning bolt, and here's another
Mm.
lightning bolt, and here's a bigger lightning bolt. And Uranus's command of electricity was that he was discovered at the time that electricity was being discovered as well. So there's the connotations of a more recent discovery, which is, of course, Uranus, discovered in now 1781, I think it was. And the things that happened around that time, change, revolution, the 1780s, the French Revolution, all around that time, the American revolutions have always been associated with Uranus. So change and rebellion and revolution are Uranus's signatures. Whereas, for Jupiter, the change comes from, let's say, needing to ground the moral codes, what we believe in at the same time, the truth that we are living. What are we doing about that in this day and age? There's a whole lot of uncertainty because we're seeing so much, let's say, not happening as well
Mhm.
as happening, aren't we? There's so much
Yeah.
put into this box.
And also, with, as you said here, they have so many common themes, most of it being the view toward the future. And we usually think of Jupiter as being, hope for the future. And it can signify that, but it can also signify discontent of the now, that makes us say something needs to change. We want a better future. And that is what can trigger the hope for the future. And then when we have Uranus involved there, then it's like, they're both saying it's not enough. Our current state of affairs, or the current status quo, needs to be shaken up in order for something to break forth, to break through. And that's how we get to that enlightenment and that awakening. And, the awakening process can be very difficult sometimes. It can even be, I would even say, Uranus from the point of view of psychological astrology can be associated with trauma. And that can be intense psychological trauma, or it can be trauma at a more subtle level. But there is, a sort of trauma involved when it comes to, when our world is shattered, when our paradigm is shattered. We all say we want a new world and a better world, but we tend to still stay stuck and even addicted to a certain extent to the current status quo, because when we don't know what a new world looks like or what the future looks like, it can be scary.
Yeah.
So as you said, there's celebratory times, and there's times where we can just really fear the unknown.
Yeah, it's hard to know what's coming up, but there's a big part of Jupiter in there. of course, in the opposition. So the unknown very much is Uranus. We don't know. We always say in astrology, when Uranus is involved, we can't predict anything.
It's the element of surprise.
It's surprise. And if we're not surprised, then we're disappointed in a way. But Uranus does not do that. So we'll see Uranus coming to someone's, prominent part of a chart or whatever. And it's like, be prepared for the unexpected. There was something that I kind of said over the past few months, that with this energy that it was rising around the eclipses and everything, it's like, just the word unexpected is something that we can, just open up.
Expect the unexpected.
Expect the unexpected. But with Jupiter, involved with the unexpected is the big words of faith and hope. Okay, so again, we can put that over to religious type of faith and hope. But in the end, even not being religious, we need to all live with a sense of faith and hope in our lives to be positive, to continue to be positive, to look to the future and know that things have always, in a sense, just in this way, Jupiter and Uranus coming together have always changed the dynamic, shifted the world, and that's happened many times. So again, we're part of just the next big shift in a way. And of course, there's a lot of other big things happening, Pluto in Capricorn, Neptune in Pisces. We're not going to talk about that so much today because we want to concentrate on this theme and archetype as we go. So it's a really exciting subject, I think.
And the fact that many of us in modern astrology anyway believe that Uranus is the ruler of astrology, right? So that's good for us in astrology. But it's interesting that you say, that we know Uranus means you can't predict anything, right? And Uranus rules astrology. So, there's predictive astrologers, and some of them are very good at what they do. I think, those of us that are working more in the realm of understanding the meaning of life and the meaning of our lives and the unfolding of our lives, that means taking a broader view of life, So life isn't just a series of events happening to us for us to try to control. It's knowing when there's time to sort of let go and say, maybe there's something better for me here. I mean, I have Uranus exactly within a degree, and it's been going over my IC, my fourth house cusp. And I have moved 3 times this year. None of them of my will, but I kind of knew I had a sense it was coming. I didn't even know where we were going, and I just said, there's no point in resisting this. I knew that Uranus would win over my personal will, and so that's what's the beauty of being able to see these signatures and how they affect your personal chart. And so when you can say, you know what, I'm going to try to go with the excitement, or I'm going to try to go with, what's on the other side. See, Jupiter in Libra, we know is Libra being the sign of harmony and justice and connection. But it can also, as Jupiter expands things, and it can unbalance, the scales. So we've seen justice versus injustice a lot, in this past year or so, when we've been having this Jupiter and Uranus in this dance with each other. And, we also see where can just being nice and Jupiter wants harmony, and it wants everything to be okay and everyone to get along and everything like that.
I think that's sometimes,
well, yeah, Jupiter in Libra. That's more Libra. Yeah. But then Jupiter being the great benefic will maybe even expand that sense. But with Uranus and Aries in hard aspect to it, and it being in the sign of rebellion, is saying, this is not helpful. Sometimes it's not helpful to just be nice, to just be quiet. We've seen so many of these women's movements coming up where women are saying no more. Okay, maybe people will see me as a horrible, not nice, not good girl or whatever, or a loud, scary woman, but it's worth the risk because things need to change. So many different sectors of society
Exactly.
when they rise up, it's saying, I've done my best. I've played the game. I've tried to be nice. I've tried to be in harmony, but something's got to give.
Yeah.
And that's usually that's that Uranus. And as we said, your Jupiter expands and magnifies the quality of the planet that it aspects. And so in no matter what sector of society we're in, we're all feeling a little bit prodded, at least here in the United States. We're all feeling like there's something we need to speak out about, or there's some injustice that we can no longer ignore.
Yeah. Well, which is a good thing. There's so many things to like shout about, stand up for, and in a sense fight for. I think perhaps more of the fights are going to come next year, because Mars is in very prominent aspects to the nodes and things next year. But we'll talk about that next, another time. But as we, as you said, Jupiter, Uranus, for myself, they started off the opposition on my Jupiter. Okay, so I have Jupiter in Aries. And in this year, no doubt, of course, as you were talking about Uranus being the ruler of astrology, I think in a sense, 2017 has been a big year for astrological kind of, flow through, just more and more happening. Of course, that's the world of social media and stuff, but also the rise of the fake news astrology and all that type of thing that we're noticing more. And so we have these accentuated type of scenarios. That's Jupiter. It expands everything, right? So we're seeing perhaps a lot more. Again, if someone's got the right to do that, then someone else has as well. So everyone's doing it, it's not just ourselves. So therefore, that's the big overwhelming picture that's going on at the moment. Not that ever really stops, but there's more times that it's accentuated.
Well, yeah, and I was just reading Cosmos and Psyche, and there's a really great chapter there by Richard Tarnas on the Jupiter and Uranus cycle. And it's often associated with creative breakthroughs in many areas of society.
The genius aspect, really, isn't it?
Brilliance, genius. And so, and I know I've been really excited about things I've been reading along the lines of astrology, with astrologers really speaking out more. And, in this era of fake news, you don't know it's true or not, and all this Neptunian stuff clouding everything, isn't it strange that, at least to me, astrology is one thing that really makes sense anymore? When you can't trust the news, you don't know what, you can't trust your friends and family's opinion, but if you know how to read the symbols of the stars, at least for me, I feel like I get some solace, like just being able to see the unfolding of these cycles.
Yeah. Well, it's making a lot more sense to a lot of people, people that have been on the fringes of going, this is interesting. What is it exactly? And moving beyond, sun sign astrology, of course, to understand, well, on a more mundane level, what's happening in the world that is reflected by, as Rick Tarnas wrote, about this amazing, the amazing volume of through history, the world view at the time reflected with, the planetary combinations at any particular time. It's, if someone is looking for a book that's not perhaps so astrological in a sense, because it's like historical as well, do look up Rick Tarnas's Cosmos and Psyche. That's a very Uranus Jupiter volume as well. Is so much information in there. So yeah, Jupiter and Uranus have got that wonderful creative genius aspect, as well as revolutionary, but also inventive and scientific. So a lot of scientific breakthroughs, although we weren't, I've got a few examples, down the track here, but, what's happening out there, we can't keep up with all of it either. There's just so much going on. Did you want to say something about this slide, just the Uranus?
Well, yeah, the Uranus and Aries, Aries being the sign of the instinctual, right? The instinctual, the going for what you feel, going for what your body is like craving or says has to save or says has to defend. And so when we have Uranus there, Uranus is, radical. So it's that radical change, the radical need for rebellion of the status quo. I think there's many people in the United States. There's a whole resistance movement rising that, a lot of them are, nice little moms and, little ladies and things like that. They probably never saw themselves as radicals, and they are getting into it. And so the Uranus can be extremely polarizing. I mean, it adds such this intense energy. And again, in Aries, it being instinctual. And so, but the purpose, and so it's not rebelling without a cause. It is rebelling for a cause, for the purpose of liberating, of finding freedom, of evolution, and of, what Carl Jung calls individuation. We are here to individuate, be our authentic, unique selves, and follow our unique path. And another thing that I see a lot in America now is, a lot of people, you'll go on Facebook and say, why aren't you, why isn't so-and-so speaking up about this or about this or about this? And like you said, Julia, especially with this Jupiter aspect, there's so much to keep up with. It's like, if I talk about race relations, but I don't mention what's going on, in Haiti or, or Puerto Rico, or whatever, then all of a sudden, I'm not being a good resistor or, whatever. So it's kind of like, I believe we're each here for our own special, unique purpose. And sometimes you just got to pick your cause and give your all to that cause.
Yeah. You can't be everywhere. And that's the overwhelmingness of Jupiter. It's like there's way too much. There's too much information. There's too much of everything. So how do you curb that? So Uranus will help you individuate your cause, right? So which one sticks with you? The moral code of Jupiter is like, again, both of them together individuate your cause, and have a cause, because, gosh, I can't believe how much I'm told as, let's say, the chief of the CIA, what I should be doing, or just comments about, the CIA is this and that and should be doing this and should be doing that. It's like, okay, well, that's your idea. Start your own,
right.
And, the CIA should be this. And okay, yes, I know we've taken on a big name, but, we're doing it. We're doing the work, and we're doing the work that we can as much as we can. And, but you still get criticized so much about what you do.
What's so interesting, that's exactly the tactic that I've used. Like, whenever I would do, sometimes, I just do like a new moon post or a full moon post. And I mean, there's no way of getting every single asteroid and, whatever in there. I mean, there's thousands of them, right?
And they want to put it into you.
Right. And I will say, well,
post-bombing.
You write something. And then most of the time the person will turn around and be like, you're right. I should write something. I should start my own blog, because it's, when people are out there commenting and criticizing, it's like they need to turn it around on themselves. Yep. And see, when we're not on top of this Uranian energy, then it will come out in some very not helpful ways.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So there's a lot going on, a lot to keep up with. And instead of just voicing your opinion about things now, well, I think as Jupiter goes into Scorpio, have you got your cause under your belt? What are you going to, what's the passion that you're going to kind of, get into?
And, I did want to just interject there something too, is that, and I think it's December, Saturn, which is in Sagittarius. So Jupiter is, Saturn is in Jupiter's sign. So it's being ruled by this Jupiter, and Saturn's being on it's night, Saturn's on its best behavior in a way. It's in the sign of expansiveness and the sign of learning and coming and forming our beliefs, right? Which is Jupiter. Then when Saturn moves into its own sign in Capricorn, that's going to shift things and change things. So these beliefs that we're forming now from all of this, stirring of things have to change, we're forming our beliefs on how we view the world. We're going to soon be having to actually put those beliefs into action, and maybe even, and like whittle them down to what's actually useful, because it'll be going to, from Saturn in Sagittarius, the sign, forming your principles, the learning, the student going into Capricorn, which is the cause, putting things into the world, putting things into work, putting things into your, life purpose, whatever, from like the 9th house to the 10th house. Yeah. So,
well, that's the, Uranus also moving into Taurus later next year. So we've had Saturn in Sagittarius, Uranus in Aries in a trine, also through the last year or so, in fire. And fire is all about the big ideas, the heating up, like this is exciting. And so into Earth we go with both of those planets.
Mm-hmm. And we're currently, Jupiter and Uranus are in the cardinal signs, right? Mm-hmm. And the cardinal signs are starting something, getting something going. It's like the beginning of something new, right? And so, and with this slide, we see Jupiter as expansiveness and abundance and ultimately growth, but it's growth within the boundaries of Saturn, because Saturn is the boundary of the personal planets and the social planets versus the outer planets. So when we think of, Jupiter wanting to grow, usually wanting gradual growth that will last over the long haul. And then here it is coming up to alignment with Uranus, which is saying, it's evolutionary growth. Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury. So Mercury is, the limited mind. It's the, immediate data. It is, like putting ideas together that are useful. Whereas Uranus is the brilliance. Uranus is the memory, Mercury is short-term memory, the memory of the now and the understanding of the now. And Uranus is the long-term memory, even maybe beyond this lifetime, right? And so Uranus is that evolution even beyond Saturn. And so when you have, as you said, both of these have to do with the future and they have to do with growth. But Uranus is saying, let's grow to the point where we don't even know where we're going to land, but this is, and so it's kind of even challenging that growth of Jupiter. So this is where I put, like, I feel it's like Jupiter is our faith, and our faith is something that we tend to hold very precious, faith and hope. But that can even be shattered when we're talking about needing a quantum leap toward evolution. Mm-hmm. There was a really great show. I love this one show on HBO. It was, The Nick? It was called The Nick, which was like from, I forgot whose life it was based on, but it was the early 1900s. It was the beginning of medicine in the United States. Mm-hmm. And like, there was doctors and hospitals, and doctors were seen as very, like godlike creatures. And there was an African-American that had studied in Paris, and he came to America, and he had been educated in all the best schools. But then when he came here, or back to New York, he was really treated terribly, and nobody wanted to hire him or anything like that. And he was told at one point, he's pushing too hard. He wants to go too fast, with this whole, race acceptability thing. And he was said, this is long overdue, and so for some people, we might think, oh, we're moving too fast, we're evolving too fast. And you can see it in many different sectors of society, women, people, gay, trans, African-Americans, all kinds of people of color. And the status quo is saying you're moving too fast, where we're saying, no, this is long overdue. Yeah. We've been too quiet for too long. Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like it's so rapid now as well. As well as things, again, taking too much time. But, we'll bring up something else. We might see more progress, let's say, in the next few months, because Pluto is going to go direct. Also, just a few hours after this exact opposition of Jupiter and Uranus. But I love someone just on the thread there, Claudia, says, yes, evolutionary growth. And that is a perfect... two perfect words for Uranus and Jupiter at the moment, evolutionary growth. So have a look how you are personally growing or have grown in the last year. Just even, with your beliefs. Some of them, as this slide said, some of them need to be shattered and just go, that does not work for me. That sense of what I've been believing in. It could be another individual. It could be believing in a relationship that's going to work. It could be believing in the job that's going to get you somewhere. It could be believing in what have you. It's like taking the next step and be confident. Jupiter is about confidence and doing things that work for you. Saturn sort of sums that up and helps you master your life accordingly, but you have to believe in yourself first. Okay, you have to believe in your actions, your way of command, in a sense, because Jupiter, as the sky god, in ancient myth, he was the one that did whatever he liked. Now, there's something that is said about that. It's your own sort of grounding and morals that get you through, not what others think. So if you've got that strong, you'll be able to, let's say, master Saturn well. And I love, what you sort of alluded to there before. I've heard Rick Levine say before that, Jupiter puffs up, big, 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 until it hits Saturn. And then it goes, oh, there's Saturn. Okay, I must come down to Earth again. So there's a reality that these two work together. I mean, the Jupiter Saturn cycle is also another very interesting one, which is, of course, a big story that comes and culminates in 2020. But we've talked about that in various ways before, and we will do again, but not today. So let's move on. So let's have hang on, actually, before I go back, let's just have a look at the
chart.
We'll have a look at the chart, but let's just have a look at the dates of, as we said, Jupiter-Uranus oppositions have happened 3 times. This is the third one happening at 22 Aries, and the dates for the last 2, December last year and March this year. But the current cycle began, as Christina was saying earlier, in June 2010 at 0 Aries. And then there were 2 other conjunctions that happened at the end of Pisces. And this is particularly interesting and tells us a lot about this Jupiter and Uranus cycle that's culminating now in the opposition, like the full moon sort of aspect of this cycle. And look, I remember, we'll talk a bit more about what comes up there, but I remember the CIA started their first YouTube videos and reports in 2010.
Wow. That's,
I know,
happy
that's
birthday.
cool. Well, in a way.
Happy Jupiter Uranus. Oh, that's exciting.
Well, we started mid-year that year, and I was just kind of looking back on some of the things the other day, but as I was researching this, and I remember that we did an equinox report. So September 2010, we did an equinox report. There was 3 of us. Olga Morales was there, Nick Owens, the 3 of us. We sat on a panel and we talked about the equinox chart, and we talked about the conjunction that was just happened at 28 Pisces, so the middle conjunction. And it was conjunct the fixed star Shiat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
And there was already a lot of water in Australia in particular. Floods had begun, and they just got worse, especially in Queensland. And for the next 3 months and into January of 2011, we had so much water. And Shiat, the fixed star at 20, I think it's 29 Pisces, but of course those conjunctions were very close. What we said in our report was, move to higher ground, everybody. Like, as though, there's a lot of water coming. And anyway, there it was, and we were kind of a bit spooked out about it, because Shiat has got these connotations, of course, of floods, shipwrecks, things being destroyed by water. Anyway, I don't want to scare you, but there's so many things that come up very often with this. So, but also the cycle began originally, like the first conjunction was at 0 Aries. How potent is that? And then just a few weeks, a few months afterwards, it's the rising of the Arab Spring that really sort of changed the world so much, didn't it? Hang on, let me get to that there. Wow. So that, that began into December 2010 and into January, which kind of set off this trail of reverberation through the Arab countries in the Middle East. You looked into that a little bit, didn't you, as well, Christina? That sort of
well, I had
timing.
some other, I looked at some of these other times, which to me was, what was interesting was that, well, they called it the Deep Horizon oil spill, or the BP oil spill. That actually happened at the balsamic, just before it was exact. So that was in about like April of that year. And so Jupiter and Uranus were both in Pisces, and they were on Shiat. They were like, I think 28, 29.
There wasn't an exact
Pisces
conjunction, but yeah, they were in that area.
Yeah, they were like within that area. And so, what was interesting about that is, I mean, the symbolism of Pisces, obviously, with not only water, but if something is toxic and it just spreads. And so what had happened with the BP oil spill was it was an explosion, Uranus, right? And then they tried to clean it up. They tried to cover it up, but it was just too much. There was no denying. There was animals being covered in oil and things, and it took months for it to, and billions of dollars for it to be cleaned up. And in the meantime, of course, there were a lot of animals, sea animals and everything, that were killed, and it was a terrible mess here. But if you think about that time, that was that should have been a wake-up call. I think it was a wake-up call for a lot of people, that we have to care about our environment, and we can't just leave it up to the big business to police themselves, right? Like, we as citizens we have to keep our eyes open. We have to be responsible, and we have to speak up when we see these things happening in our communities. I mean, the pictures of a lot of these animals like covered in oil, I think, it was just devastating for people. And so that sort of was kind of like the Big Bang right there of that balsamic conjunction.
It was also Chiron moving into Pisces right? As well, wasn't it? Yeah, around June. Yeah.
And then we also had the Affordable Care Act was signed into law by Obama, that the opposition called Obamacare, like, just, I guess, make fun of it, which then the Democrats and Obama himself took that on. It's like, yes, it's Obamacare. And so that is universal health care for all in the United States. And now we've been seeing since, late last year and all this year, the GOP trying to reverse that. And this is the third time. This past week was their third attempt to reverse it. And yet again, it got struck down. So it's really interesting to follow this, whole drama from its inception. And that was I think that was right there in like around June of 2010 to now, in this the full phase of it. Also in late 2010 was the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a law in the U.S. military where if you're gay or bi or whatever, then you just don't say anything. No one's going to ask you, and then you don't say anything. So you basically, like, if you say something, then you'll be ousted. You're out. Well, the repeal of that said you can claim who you are, and you shouldn't have any repercussions. And so now, I haven't seen anything specifically on Don't Ask, Don't Tell lately, but we do see a lot of these issues coming back around with people who are, of different sexual orientations, like the non-binary, and homosexual. So we want to keep an eye on that. And Uranus usually, we were talking earlier. I think, didn't you say there was something with homosexual issue?
Yeah. Well, let's just go there and we'll come back to those. But yes, in Australia, we have just been given what's called a postal vote to vote on same-sex marriage, right? We're a little bit behind. I admit this progressive country in so many ways is so behind on the 8 ball here. But it's very interesting timing for this Jupiter-Uranus opposition to, the equality that we're striving for in so many ways around the world is just so upfront. And it's really interesting what you just brought up as well. So we're being surveyed. It's not a vote. It's very kind of weird. It's a postal survey that they've spent so much money on. Like, it could have been done with so much more regard to, saving the dollars and putting them better spent somewhere else. And so what we've found is that, of course, there's a real buzz about that, and that's the big happening sort of thing in the news in Australia at the moment, where many of us are shaking their head, and it's like, it's just so behind. Like, I think it will definitely go through, but in the end, the politicians have to decide once they get all the surveys in. So it's not.
Oh, so it's not a popular vote thing. That ultimately,
it's ridiculous in that sense. But anyway, the big campaign is all about, yes, that any sane person or people that is, about equality and gay rights and marriage rights and all that sort of stuff. It's about love. It's not about, who says what is allowed in this world. And so the campaign is yes. Okay. So that's a very positive kind of word, of course, for what this is. And the other interesting thing, that's why I picked this picture, was that Mars and Venus come together in the night.
Oh, that's right.
Sorry, in the morning skies.
I think it's October 5th. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, October the 5th at 19 Virgo. So we're going to have a session of that next week with Michelle Finey, who has written the book on Venus and Mars. So I'll leave more information for that. But the timing is incredible. With this, Jupiter in Libra, equality, Uranus, Aries, we have the right to love who we love, really. Mm-hmm. And so what's interesting, what you brought up about what you were saying before as well, with don't ask, don't tell, was that it again, bringing up the same theme of gay rights and so on, is that 27 Libra is where Pluto and Saturn joined in 1982. And it's almost like the gay world was born to, let's say, a bigger consciousness because of, the story of AIDS and HIV, circulating and spreading and that kind of thing. And, the wariness of that, and perhaps, a lot of people kind of going, getting bad connotations about that, where in fact there was a whole generation born into Pluto in Libra that is all about equality and not having divorces apparently became very much more popular in the Pluto Libra time. So there's a lot of things that come back to that same point about equality in relationship, isn't it? About
and also
Libra.
The interesting about Jupiter is Jupiter also is about our consensus reality, is what do we as the consensus believe to be true, and how do we live these archetypes, and even to the point of like defining our society by certain beliefs, to the point that we don't even really think about it. We just take them as this is how we live. And so, with Jupiter having been in Libra, the sign of, the law, of justice, and having to define that, and it's wrapping that up right now, like saying, okay, like this is urgent, right? As we know, those last few degrees are those urgent degrees. And so it's interesting that you said everyone probably assumed in Australia we're so progressive, and of course people can love each other, but now it's saying, if we really believe this, it needs to be on paper, it needs to be law. And
we believe in equality. It's simply it. In so many levels. I mean, we have such a multicultural landscape, city landscape in Australia. There's people from everywhere, so we're learning to live with each other. Things erupt now and then, but in the end, this it's equality in all departments: sexuality, race, beliefs, and things rise up about that. Now, just this Coca-Cola sign, a famous sign in famous because it's where it is in King's Cross in Sydney, has gone, the gay colours and that type of thing. And even our football, which is such a masculine, like the grand final of what we call the AFL, the Australian Football League, is on Saturday coming up. So it's a big week for that. And they have put yes on their logo.
I love that.
Isn't that great?
Oh my God, that's worth celebrating.
Yeah, so the positiveness of things, they are out there. And I think because of, in a sense, big corporations, or even the very, as I said, masculine sort of side of our sporting world, being behind that. Look, I have to say it's definitely going to go through. It better, otherwise I'm leaving.
There's nowhere else to go there, Julia.
Where on the planet is the best, hey? Okay, so let's have a look. We've looked through that. Is there something you wanted to say?
Oh, yes, I wanted to talk about the Saudi women. Okay, so now here we are at the Jupiter-Uranus opposition. And this is from, like you'd said, this is the third and final exact opposition. And so I was reading Austin Coppock earlier today, and he had a beautiful line there that this is more like the closing act of these three oppositions, these three alignments. Because, what happens is, I know Uranus went retrograde and Jupiter went retrograde, and, so they kind of pass each other. And so a lot of people are like, oh my God, what does this mean? What does this signify in my life? Well, look at these dates, and obviously you look at your chart, and if you don't know how to read your chart, get a reading from an astrologer. But, looking at December, around December, March, and then now these shakeups in our lives, we've had a little bit of practice with them. One thing I've seen a lot, and I've seen it in my life and with other people, is they'll get maybe some big opportunity, some big door opening, or some big great partnership, and then it'll be like snatched away, or it'll like suddenly like, oh nope, sorry, I didn't mean to, or that didn't work, or whatever. And so I've seen that, and that's that Uranus sort of shifting things. And what I can make from that really is maybe you're not quite ready for that growth. Maybe that level of growth is in you in some way, but you need to maybe grow up to it, or grow into it, and so one of the lessons of Uranus is not to take things personally, right? I mean, that's the real beauty of Aquarius, Uranus, is knowing it really isn't personal. It's not about me. There's there's a higher viewpoint that you can view everything from. What does this mean in terms of my growth, or where I need to grow, or what my soul is calling for? And so this is just all the stuff in the past week. I mean, this whole NFL controversy that was, of course, started by Trump. He just threw this out there, and everybody, all the news media just ate it up. And then, of course, there needed to be a response, because, the beauty of this experience that we're having right now in the US is we are defining the type of world we want to live in. Mm-hmm. We're not just going to let like one person, no matter how much quote unquote power he has, define our society, Mm-hmm. And so we had the NFL kneeling protests. And that kind of came out of nowhere. Nobody was really expecting to have to protest yet again, but here we go.
Spontaneous protest.
Right, spontaneous. It was the perfect Uranus and Aries sort of expression. And then with the Saudi women in Saudi Arabia, women were just granted the right to drive. And that also came as kind of a shock. And I have a quote, if you wouldn't mind going to, I think it's the next slide. Yeah, this one. It said, this was from The Guardian in today's newspaper. As it said, in doing so, in giving women the right to drive, it gave women in the conservative country a, quote, jolt of empowerment that many had long demanded and believed might never arrive. Surprise, joy, and trepidation were common reactions to the move, which senior officials hailed as a watershed moment. Change in Saudi Arabia has long been seen as better evolutionary than revolutionary, but this declaration shocked the system. So this is a pretty textbook example of, the power of this Uranus and Jupiter opposition. A change that needed to be made in the status quo, having to do with the law, having to do with rights, having to do with correcting a wrong. And what's interesting is I went back to 2010, And there was an article in the New York Times about Saudi women. It had been like 2 years prior that this movement was starting, that women wanted to drive. But what had happened was in 2010, there was a counter movement. And there were women that came out and said, my guardian knows best for me. Because they call, a woman can't go anywhere without a male guardian, you know, whether it's even like a brother or an uncle or a father or whatever, or husband usually. I've even heard even like the oldest son sometimes has to be their guardian. I mean, it's very, very backward. It's really, really sad. But it's interesting that this, it took this long. Women had been told that they would damage their ovaries if they were to drive. I mean, crazy stuff like that. But now they're seeing all this opportunity, and I saw a news story that said now women can potentially even work, or go, they could have movement out of the house, and they can have more literal physical freedom, so freedom, again, liberation, that is, the high side of Uranus. So I just thought that this was an absolutely like unexpected, but really joyous and beautiful thing.
Yeah. I mean, we could look back at so many times, like just I think the time that women first got to vote. Again, I can't remember the details, but very much around the time of Jupiter-Uranus combination in the 20s. So yes, these breakthroughs.
And we didn't get into it too much, but Eris, that we're talking, Eris, the goddess of discord, Discordia, she doesn't move around too much, but she's been in orb of Uranus for quite some time now, for at least since last year. And Eris has been associated with women's rights. And I think in the astrology of the women's movement, they've traced it back and found a lot of Eris contacts.
Yep. Well, yes, that's right. Eris actually went into Aries in the 20s as well. So there's a combo there. So Eris was actually with Jupiter and Uranus. Now, Jupiter and Uranus have a 13, 14-year cycle. And I looked into some of those cycles, which was very interesting. But I posted this yesterday on our Facebook page as well, and just kind of tagged it Jupiter and Uranus, because as I read this, it's just so perfect for this type of energy. Now, this is more on the experimental, inventive side of Uranus, Jupiter, expanding our minds with new information, new developments, new inventions. And I'll just read this. Right now, a range of optical telescopes, including the Hubble Space Telescope, having said something about telescopes are very Jupiter, Uranus as well, because they expand the outer space. The vision. Anyway, are said to be following a discovery which, if confirmed, could greatly expand our understanding of gravitational waves and the dramatic events that create them. The waves are ripples in space-time that are produced by the most explosive events in the universe. And being able to detect them gave us an entirely new way to study the universe. Just think of it suddenly being given a whole new sense in addition to sight, smell, hearing, taste, and touch with which to explore the world. So again, exploring the world with these new inventions and taking that in. And apparently this announcement, this was dated yesterday, but it's coming today. So how perfect.
That's amazing.
I'm not pretending to understand it all, but but understanding the breakthroughs that are constantly happening in a sense. But it's just you read that and you read some things, and the astrology is in the world. We can see it all the time, and of course that's places like the CIA like to keep you in touch with that.
Exactly.
Exactly. So, but looking into that, I thought, okay, let's have a look at, the places that we know of now. In 2010 and around then, the Large Hadron Collider and the cyclotron were being developed and had their first experiments. And during the Pluto-Uranus squares that followed 2010, or were perhaps still in orb at that time, where they actually discovered what they called the Higgs boson, which they called the God particle.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
That was wild.
profound sort of developments in the not the splitting of an atom, it's the smashing of atoms. Again, I'm not going to pretend that I understand it all. But when I looked into then the kind of background of Jupiter-Uranus conjunctions over time, again, they meet every 13, 14 years, is that when CERN began, Jupiter and Uranus were conjunct in 1954 at 27 Cancer. And it's actually around exactly the same date. It was the 29th of September in 1954 that CERN actually started, with Jupiter and Uranus in Cancer. So I went looking for it, and then I went, oh my God, this is too amazing, because it's exactly like tomorrow, or the same date as what we're speaking about it now. What I was going to say about Cancer, I've done a lot of research into scientists, and Cancer, the sign of Cancer, which you would maybe not think associated with science and scientists, have a lot of Cancer planets. So anyway, that's just something to keep in mind. I mean, it does make sense, because Cancer, the water sign that feels that, I mean, even Einstein would say that, you know, it's not about what you know, it's what you feel, or it's about the creativeness that comes in with the science. Most of the breakthroughs happen through creation stories, not through kind of, you know, being in the lab. It's about being inventive and creative with what you know.
Yeah, that would make me want to look at exactly some of those degrees, because the Cancer Capricorn axis is significant when we look at, now this is
square today as well.
Right. And what's significant now when we talk about being on the leading edge, you know, being on the cutting edge, the leading edge in astrology, I believe one of the things anyway is the planetary nodes, especially of the outer planets, you know, or Saturn and beyond. And Cancer Capricorn, I know Cancer has the north node of Pluto. It's been there for forever, because it doesn't move very long. Yeah. The north node of Pluto, the north node of Saturn, and the north node of Jupiter, I believe it's those. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure. And the Jupiter and Saturn nodes obviously will you know, move a little faster than the Pluto one. But, you know, as we know, Pluto now is on its own south node. That's why it's given us some extra extra impact.
We'll talk about that in a sec.
Yeah,
but
but I was just thinking about with Cancer, and then also you know, at around 13, 14 degrees, Cancer is Sirius, right? So the brightest star in the sky. And so that's, you know, just when you're saying about scientists, I would be interested to see what degrees are activated there.
Maybe we'll do a live show about science and Cancer. Anyway,
well, I'll watch. I don't think I could be a host.
Yeah, well, it's all interesting research, which we love. But just to finish up on this, so the next time Jupiter and Uranus were conjunct was at 3 degrees of Libra in 1968, and then they were conjunct again at 0 Libra for the moon landing. So, you know, we have these breakthrough kind of course, as we've been saying, technologies, advancements with Jupiter and Uranus. So, you know, it is happening now as well. You know, we're culminating this next stage of advancement, let's say, planetary advancement, consciousness. Jupiter's very much a consciousness planet, isn't it? It's like how much we take in, how much we're aware of, how much we think we know, all that type of thing is very Jupiter. Now, so as we said before, yes, Jupiter and Uranus will be exactly opposite in a few hours. Hang on, sorry, in a few hours, but at the same time, a few hours later, so about 12 hours later, 13 hours later, is Pluto. Pluto, of course, is stationing right now, has been as an outer planet station for a long time, a few weeks, because they stay at the same degree for a long time. Pluto's been at 16 degrees of Capricorn for a long time now. And so it's going to be turning direct tomorrow. What can you say about the shift in the energy of what, let's say, we'll feel for the next few months? What do you call it? Pluto will be direct till, let me just see, I've got the chart, till 23rd of April 2018, moving all the way to 2117 Capricorn.
Well, definitely the station period is a significant time to be paying attention to what is coming to light. You know, Pluto, the modern ruler, Scorpio, often rules things that are hidden, that are in the dark, that are a lot of times things that are, we think are shameful or too dark to look at, or we don't want to look at, like death and you know, all kinds of really just really dark material. Pluto usually deals with things that have been going on a long time, like thinking of things like festering in the basement. This is usually whenever Pluto is moving around, like stationing, direct or retrograde, that's when some of these dark things become unearthed. Mm-hmm. You know, I see, and I've even seen some, I can't recall exactly, like some things in the news over the past like couple of weeks where things have been unearthed that have been buried a really long time. And it's interesting. I just came back from Portland, Oregon, at a workshop with Mark Jones, who talked about the outer planets, and especially Pluto. You know, when Pluto was discovered in 1933, that was the rise of fascism. And so, you know, when we think about some of the signatures, you know, when a planet is involved or is discovered, you know, we think about, you know, we are seeing some of this rise of fascism now in the world. Again, it's things that we may not, are too unpleasant to want to look at, but the fact is that they're there. And in order to be able to deal with certain topics and certain aspects of life that are part of all of us, that are part of our collective, you know, they have to come to light. I'm not specifically saying that there's a fascist something. Well, we have seen, haven't we, in Germany, the fascist party just for the first time since World War II got a seat in parliament, right? I would say that would be a little, you know, significant now for this Pluto movement. And then we also have, you see Mars at 14 Virgo was about to trine Pluto on Saturday, you know, and I mean, so here it is giving a little more instinctual energy and movement to this unearthing of Pluto, you know, and these being in Earth signs. I don't know. What do you think,
Earth
Julia?
will move. Hopefully not too much again, but, you know, symbolically move and shift for all of us. It is shifting. So let's just be safe in amongst it all, hey?
I mean, and a positive thing is it can get us moving. It can get us moving toward our goals. It can get us to say, stop getting out of our way and take action and follow those impulses where, you know, that can help to empower us, you know, just from a personal standpoint. And when we do look at things at these outer planets, then a lot of times they do show big movements of the Earth. Now, I'm not an expert on these natural disasters, but I do know, I want to put a little plug in for OPA, the Organization of Professional Astrologers, and they think it's this weekend or next week, they're doing a OPA cafe on the astrology of natural disasters. You know, we've seen a lot of them lately, sadly. But it can help if mundane astrology is something you're interested in to, you know, to take a look at, to learn a little bit more about that.
It's like what I said earlier. It's like, you know, there's a conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus on Shiat. Everyone may move to higher ground, like the town crier would kind of be the astrological town crier in every town should be taken more seriously. But that becomes kind of alarmist, doesn't it, as well? But just being aware.
Well, but you know what is it's interesting, Julia, you say that, is because I've seen some reports saying that there's a call to get like the weather, you know, the weather predictions to get even more precise, because when we had Hurricane Irma or Harvey or Irma, I think it was, I forget, there's so many of them.
There's so many
Irma, when it was coming here to Florida, they didn't know, was it going to go up the East Coast or the West Coast or the this or that? And there were millions of people evacuating. Yeah. And fortunately, it didn't, it still hit some areas very devastatingly, but not the whole state. But practically the whole state was evacuated. And so, there's a call to try to get more precise. I mean, and that just means more technology, really. I mean, there's only so much we can do, and there's only so much we can really know, right?
But there's something about the weather that's always been somewhat unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sky god,
like nature.
Sky god thing. Yeah, that's right. They're bringing about the weather, and we're reading the astrological weather. So
exactly.
Anyway, we'll talk about 2018 as it gets a bit closer, although it's just around the corner, isn't it? So now we probably give it a bit of a wrap up now, Christina, because we've been going for an hour, and that's good timing. So before we finish up, what we've got 2 Facebook lives. Booked in over the next 2 weeks, Venus and Mars next week and Jupiter in Scorpio the week after. So stay tuned for that. We perhaps are going to start, as you suggested, event invitations, so that people get reminders. So if you want to be reminded, say yes to our event on Facebook. We keep working out the best ways to do this, don't we, as we go. If you want to be in tune more with that. Now, but otherwise, to know more about what's going on with the CIA behind the scenes, in a sense, or more information, these Facebook Lives are, in a sense, a general overview, although they're pretty precise, dense in information. And if you like that, you might want to support the CIA a bit more, so we can bring you more stuff. Christina, you can join as a monthly member, meaning that you will get our month ahead webinar. You can join as a silver member, which means that you get all this other stuff down the bottom. So we're building up an amazing archive of astrological material that is always there and accessible for you. You get a login. So we've got some great quality stuff in there, and we're building on it all the time because we've got about 70 agents. So my job is trying to get them all to contribute there. That's another story. But if you're out there, agent, that's what we're looking for. But Christina, you're going to be doing one for us, perhaps November. And what's your theme you're thinking of?
I really wanted to talk about Pluto on its own south node. And I'll be looking at times in the past where, the south node of Pluto was significant, but the fact that now Pluto has been for some time on its south node. And what the planetary nodes mean. Now, the planetary nodes, as I said, I feel like this is really the leading edge of astrology right now. There'd been some writings by Dana Rudhyar about him. Right now, Mark Jones and I think a few other astrologers are really sort of doing more research on them. But we get so much. I mean, anyone who's worked at all with the lunar nodes, which is our north node and south node, we tend to call them, but they're the nodes of the moon. We see how impactful those are on a personal level. Well, the planetary nodes, especially those of the outer planets, are very impactful from not only personal level, but a collective level as well. And
so the south node of Pluto is 19 Capricorn, is that right?
I believe it's 18 Capricorn.
Oh, 18, okay.
No, I could be right.
Because, Pluto was discovered at the opposite degree of 18, 19, I don't know.
On its own north node, I believe.
It's on its own north node, but at 18 Cancer. So Pluto's having an opposition to its discovery as well. So again, a bigger picture story to what's going on, around the planet. So
as I think in case anybody hasn't realized this too, is that America is getting near its Pluto return, which will be exact in a few years from now. But still, we're in orb of the Pluto return. So I might just make it all about Pluto in the south node and America's Pluto return. There's just so much Pluto happening right now that is really a change at the most fundamental level of our lives. Yeah,
the crumbling down of the system and to rebuild again. So that's also what needs to, we need to keep faith that what's being rebuilt is going to be stronger, better, more equal, all that type of thing. So look, before we finish, we have a retreat coming up in a few weeks now. It's in a month. So for anyone that is in Australia or thinking of coming to Australia, to come and join the Good Agents in Melbourne, plus a special guest, Gemini Brett, Agent 1123, which a lot of you know. So do come along. It's going to be a great weekend of diving into the magic of Jupiter in Scorpio. We've got some great things planned for that. And as I've said before, Christina, I'd love to get all our agents together one day, but that's a bit hard, but we will work on that. Hey.
Well, I know I'll at least see you in Chicago, right, for UAC in May, right? So
okay, that's going to come up.
There's that.
We know it as well. Yeah, exactly. So look, we'll leave it at that. Thanks so much, Christina, for being online with me today. Some closing words for you. What would you like to give someone? Give our listeners, our followers here, an insight into this. Well, a top up.
Well, I think if you're here, you're probably sensing this growth opportunity and this evolution opportunity. I mean, we hear so much about evolving, and but what it actually takes is our conscious awareness and our conscious participation. And thank you so much, Julia, for allowing me to be one of your agents. I'm super proud of that. And I'm just so honored to be ushering this golden age of astrology with you and with the entire CIA. So thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to have you as part of it, Agent 128. I was just going to say, Kate Parcher is one of our agents, and of course you work for the Dream Team as well, which is a fabulous combo of people who I met in Costa Rica earlier in this year. But it was funny, when I first met Kate Parcher, I remember he said to me, we were on a star camp, so in the outback, and we were standing there, and Jupiter was particularly bright. It was in Taurus. I remember it well. It was 2011 or something. And it was particularly bright out in the desert. And it looked like it was right here. Like it was just right in your ear. It was so bright. It was so quiet out there. It was like whispering. And Kepacha, we were trying to think of a number for him, right? Like what agent number and everything we were suggesting. He's going, no good. Anyway, as we were trying to decipher that, he's saying, so who gives you the right, like me, to make agents? And I just went, Jupiter. It's right here. It's telling me to make agents, right? So that's been my mission.
That's perfect.
It's all about connecting, making astrology bigger, stronger, louder, prouder in the end as well. So thanks for being here, everyone. And we'll talk soon. Stay, in tune with what's going on the CIA, of course, and to bring you more of the cosmic intelligence. Thanks again, everyone. See ya. Bye-bye.